Hello everyone, welcome to Jennifer's Sewing and Creativity. Today we're going to be talking about how to use a walking foot with a quilt guide. But first, if it's your first time joining my channel, welcome. If you're coming from a previous video, welcome back. Today's video is a requested video. It is a long time coming and I apologize for that. If you have not seen it already, please refer to my video of where I have been, and that can explain a little bit for you. But today what we're going to do is I'm first going to tell you about the walking foot and how to use the walking guide, or the quilting guide. On some sewing machines, this is the attachment that goes on the shank of the sewing machine where you attach your sewing feet. And on my particular machine, I have a Brother SQ9185, and it gives me the option of being able to use the guide on my regular sewing feet. I don't know if all machines do this. I particularly am a Brother sewing machine person. I really love Brother machines. I do have a Singer sewing machine. And with that, this is a Singer universal walking foot, and you can see on this particular one there is nowhere to attach your quilting guide. Okay, this is just a universal. I bought this one either off of Amazon or on a sewing machine parts store online. Okay, and this is for my Singer 44, my heavy duty 4411. So we're going to put that aside. This is the walking foot that came with my Brother machine. And as you can see here, you have the hole, and that lets you take the guide and you place it right through that hole. Okay. And I have a piece of 1-inch masking tape on the bar. And what that does is that just keeps me, it gives me a continuous measurement. Sorry about that. A continuous measurement, and I don't have to worry about, you know, my measurement being from one seam to the next being off. I just put the 1-inch tape on there. You can use, they do make other widths of tape. You can use Scotch tape. You can cut a piece of paper and tape it on there. That way you know what your distance is. Whatever works for you, but that's just the way I do it. So this is the quilting guide on the right side. You can take it off and you can put it in the left side. On some quilting projects, you will sew down one side and then you flip it over and you sew from the other side, and that is to prevent puckering. Some people just continue going one way. It's really up to you what you prefer. What we are going to do is I am going to put the walking foot onto my machine, and I will show you how that works. Be right back. Okay, so I have the walking foot attached to my machine. I have my needle threaded. I am going to place the quilting guide onto the walking foot, and I have it with the masking tape set for 1 inch apart. So that will actually, from my needle position, I am going to use my number 1 stitch, which will put my needle into the center position. And I think you could see how it moved over. That is to the left, center position, and I can do a number 2, which will give it a look of a hand quilted look, but we're just going to do our straight seams today, so I have it set to the middle position. I have my fabric already layered. This was just some scrap fabric that I was playing with to learn some of my fancier stitches on my machine, and I had this left over. So I just trimmed off the ugly part of playing with the stitches. I am going to straighten up this seam. So I'm going to grab my threads, bring them towards the back. And what I want to do is first I'm going to line up the edge of the fabric with the walking foot, and that's going to give me a straight seam all the way down. Excuse me. Place my needle down. I have this set to a medium speed. We are going to excuse me, lower the needle and pardon me. Okay, that is our first seam. Give me just a moment. Okay. Sorry about that. I had to pause for just a moment and I got too hot and started coughing. So I am going to clip my threads. And the reason why I did this first seam so close to the edge, what that does is that gives me a place, a starting point to line up my quilting guide, and we have a little guest joining us. That is Luna in the background. She knows that this little pad is going to be for her. I am going to put it in a basket that she likes to sleep in. I am going to cut these little thread tails so she doesn't play with them. I know some people do not like having pets in the sewing room, but in my video of where I've been, I explain that this is Luna's house too, so you will see her in videos. And she's laying down on the pad because she knows it's hers. I'm sorry, baby, I need it. Thank you. Okay. So I am going to line up my quilting guide with the straight seam that we sewed. And my backing is black, so the stitches on the back will be invisible. But I just wanted something a little different, so I'm going to continue with the black thread, and it'll just give us a little bit of an aesthetic on the front of it. So my quilting guide is lined up. I have my needle off the very edge. I am going to lower my foot. And again, I have it set to medium speed. Straight stitch and needle down. And we're just going to follow our straight line. And you want to make sure, you can see how it'll move around a little bit. You want to make sure that you also have the back portion of the guide on the line along with the front portion. And a funny little thing, you'll see Luna in the background. This is actually the first time that I have allowed her in the sewing room while I'm actually sewing. I got her in July, but I have always been really nervous about having her in the room because she likes to play with string and thread. But I was always worried about her and the sewing machine because she is a nosy little girl. And she appears to be a little timid of the actual sound of the sewing machine. So that's a good thing. I won't have to worry about her trying to play with it. Hopefully, knock on wood. And it's just a little off, but that's okay. Okay. And there is our first line sewn, our guideline, our first line, and a lot of people, when you are quilting with a walking foot, take our pins out, when you flip it over, you'll see just a little bit of a pucker. Well, when you're using a walking foot, sometimes what it does, see, I kind of got that edge up underneath there, but that'll be okay because I'm going to trim that very little edge off. It's okay. When you use a walking foot, we sewed this direction first. So from here down, we sewed. So what a lot of people like to do when you're actually doing a big quilting project is you want to flip it around and sew from this side. And a good thing about your guide is you can remove it, flip it around, and place it in this side. So what you're going to do this time, let me put my thread back under, is you're going to first roll up your other side a little bit, place it underneath, and you're going to now want to align your guide with this side of the seam. And we'll put the needle down, our walking foot down, and you're just going to follow again. Make sure everything's okay. And let your machine do the work. You don't want to push it. With the walking foot, the machine is doing your work for you. You're just slowly guiding. Okay. And again, lift it, cut your thread, and when you look on your other side, you're not going to have a lot of noticeable pucker. Both lines came out well. So you definitely want to move your guide from right to left, or whichever way you prefer. Okay, I will do one more seam. And again, I'm going to switch it back to the right. When you're doing a larger quilt, you won't be doing it as often as I am here, since I'm doing such a small piece. So again, make sure everything's okay and straight. next line. And hopefully, if all went well, there is no puckers. Okay. And a thing that you could also do with your walking foot is you definitely want to test this out before you do it. I'm going to back out a little here so you can see this. This was a piece I was playing with, and you see my straight seam that I did first as my guide, and I was playing with fancy stitches that my sewing machine could do. The first line is on this side. Here was my guideline, and I wanted to do a fancy stitch. If you let the walking foot do the work for you, this would be how it would turn out. You can see that the stitches are pretty uniform all the way down. I tried another stitch and it just did not work with the walking foot. It just the speed wasn't right for the stitch. So when they tell you, when you look in your book, if you can use your walking foot for a fancy stitch, it'll tell you no or yes. My machine, this is why you, with my machine, I like to experiment with it, with the different stitches. In this experiment, it did not work for this one. And that is basically because the speed of the stitch does not match the walking foot. When the feed dogs and the teeth on the, I can show you on this one. So when the feed dogs and the teeth on the walking foot, you can see the teeth there. And what those do is that's designed to grab your layers of fabric and move them together through the machine. If the fancy stitch is not designed to work with a walking foot, this is what's going to happen. Okay? So then I tried using just a regular foot and the quilting guide and the same fancy stitch that was here, I tried using here. Now, some fancy stitches, your timing has to be just right, and you have to let the machine do the work. But if you're not using a walking foot, this is what will happen on a quilt. You have to make sure that your stitches and your foot match. That is what will happen. So again, I tried with the walking foot and a faster speed, and you can see where the loops started not looping. This is the original of what it's supposed to look like. So it's supposed to be like a leaf stitch. And then you can see on this one, I did not let it do it correctly. So the loops didn't. So definitely, if you're going to use your walking foot with the guide, make sure you experiment. Let me back this up a little. Experiment with your speed and the actual stitch, and that way you can achieve the way the stitch is actually supposed to look like. So definitely before you do your project, play a little bit. Okay? So I am going to go ahead and I'm going to finish this part, and then I'm going to show you when I turn it around what that will look like. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I have all of my lines in one direction sewn. I am going to now sew in the next direction. Tilt us down a little. And now you can either do a fancy stitch if you wish. You can do just a regular grid. You can do sideways. If you do sideways, mark a... Some people, what they'll do is they'll do another little stitch to start. What I think I want to do is just continue with my straight stitch. So I am again going to just sew down my edge. And I'm going to just do this for my guideline. I am just going to get my fabric straight there with the edge of this portion, this little part right here where the feed dog teeth are on the walking foot. I am going to line the edge of my fabric up with that. And that gave me another starting line to follow. Let me trim my little pieces here. And for some reason, my sewing machine is walking all over my table. I'm not sure what's going on. Usually it does not do that. Okay, so again, I am just going to go from this direction, and I'm going to, again, just line up my quilting guide. At this point, you can maybe do a wavy line. We're going to try that. So my wavy line on my sewing machine is 25. So I'm going to set for 2, 5. And since I have my guide line to line up my quilting guide, we're just going to try a wavy line, and we're going to see if it works. We are going to slow it down to medium speed and let the machine do the work. I'm just holding the fabric, slowly guiding it, but the machine's doing most of the work. So a wavy line does work with a walking foot. I'm just letting the machine do the work. I didn't change the length of the stitch, the width of the stitch. This is just the preset, and we'll see how that looks. I am not a fan of the batting I have, so there you go. So you can do some simplistic stitches with your walking foot. Do be careful when you do it, because like on our sample piece that I showed you and explained, things can get out of hand really quickly. So always have a sample piece that you can just play with. That way you can learn what your walking foot can do for you. I really like this wavy stitch. I actually have a friend on a Facebook quilting group that she really loves using the wavy stitch, and personally I think it's kind of cute. I just may have found something I like. Okay, so that is what your walking foot and your quilting guide can do for you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That lets me know that you like the content that I am creating for you. Please also subscribe, because that will keep me doing these videos for you. Again, thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.